Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes, and here are the three big stories for today. I'm not going to talk about Mike Johnson because I already talked about what's going on in Congress in my last video, what will happen. It's an explainer just trying to help you, and you can look at that on your own. So I'm going to skip past that. Reuters, Ukraine, Russia almost reached a Black Sea shipping agreement back in March. And then at the last moment, it was being brokered by Turkey. At the last moment, the deal collapsed and Russia started targeting the ports again. And it went back to kind of the way it was. Now, what's interesting is that this used to be the route, this black line here used to be the route for the Black Sea Grain Initiative. And then what Ukraine started doing was very clever. They just started hugging Romania and Bulgaria and into Turkey in non-international waters. And so hitting something in Romania or Bulgaria could have been an attack, perceived as an attack in a NATO kind of zone. And that was something that tamped that down. So what's working is working, and so they didn't do it. Okay, Zelensky had a PBS interview. Without the help of the United States, we will not have a chance to win. I think that's fair. I think that's right. But there was a little bit more to it that I want to highlight because this is really important. Anton Gerashenko highlights this here. The West is afraid of Russia's defeat in Ukraine due to the threat of nuclear weapons proliferation and strengthening China. Both of those are possible. And the interesting thing, and I talked about this in a lot of my early videos, it used to be like Russia's the big brother and China's the little brother, but they've kind of switched. And it looks like China has really risen, but it hasn't. It's not that China's risen, it's that Russia has diminished. And so there's that. And the U.S. sees China as a threat as far as the administration, as far as the military goes, that sort of thing. Okay, this is a quote from that interview. There are voices coming from the West saying that we are afraid. What's going to happen to Russia if Russia loses? So they are not afraid. We are dying here every day, but they are very afraid that there will be some sort of danger, some sort of a migration crisis. What's going to happen? Maybe China will be very strong. And if Russia will panic and have a revolution, then China will capture part of the territory of Russia, etc., etc. So everyone's afraid. God forbid China will be strong. God forbid that there would be no Putin and there will be many countries on the territory of the Russian Federation. Now, some people are calling for that. I haven't. I've said, I want to see one unified, defeated Russia so that Ukraine gets her children back. Breaking up into warlording kind of factions of Russia, I think is a very bad thing. Maybe afterwards, if they want to do that or say, do you want to stay or go? That's a different thing. But right now, unified. What's going to happen to Russia's nuclear weapons? What will happen to Russia's nuclear weapons? Zelensky asks. Okay, so that was but it's a really interesting thing. Is that why the West is really dragging their feet, or certain factions within the West? And it's a good question. Okay, so let's talk about Trump's trial. I want to show you two little bits here. The second day of jury selection, Donald Trump is in the Manhattan courtroom as jury selection continues in his hush money criminal trial. A total of 6 jurors have been seated so far as prosecutors and Trump's lawyers continue to question more potential jurors and dismiss them over their social media posts, like if they've said something one way or the other about Trump since then. A panel of 12 New Yorkers and likely 6 alternates will be selected. That's normal for a jury. But what's at stake? Trump is the first former president in U.S. history to go to criminal trial. His legal challenges come as he juggles the campaign and courtroom as the 2024 presumptive nominee. The hush money case may be the only case to face a jury before the election, and Trump could face jail time if convicted. Okay, I know this won't be a popular opinion, but if he gets sent to jail, I think the MAGA folks will go absolutely nuts, being convinced that that this is political persecution, and it may actually increase his popularity with people that are of like mind. So here are some of the things that you would see on Twitter about this, and I want you just to hear how they're perceiving it. I'm not saying that this is correct, but this is how a certain fraction of the population is going to see it, regardless of what happens. Trump just made a statement ahead of the fraudulent, see that word, fraudulent hush money trial against him in New York City involving Stormy Daniels. He correctly says this is assault on America. It's not, but it's perceived to be by this person. This is just more election interference by a crooked judiciary led by Democrats. Now, whether that's a bot or an actual person, this is the message that's going to be pushed forward. Here's another one. And this is actually a little bit more interesting, how is the Manhattan DA going to prove their case? Michael Cohen is a disbarred convicted felon, one, and that's true, and he'll be a key witness. So is Michael Avenatti. Okay, that's another big important thing. Stormy Daniels just lost her defamation case and had to pay Trump's attorney's fees. That's another big problem. 3 blank witnesses who have no credibility. This is an absolute loser. Okay, so that's how they're conceiving of this. Now let's look at some other comments as well. They don't have to prove it. They just have to find a jury of 12 Trump haters in a city full of them. That's the mentality that people have. I'm not saying that that's correct, but it looks like political persecution to that segment of society, whether it is or isn't. Now, I know that that's not how you're thinking necessarily, but this is how they're going to be thinking about it. Here's another one. You forgot the part where this is a misdemeanor turned into a felony for the first time ever. Or another, the rule of law does not matter here. They will convict. Trump will not be allowed to present exculpatory evidence in his defense. These DAs and judges are the criminals. They're actually the gangsters with badges. And finally, they're doing all of this just to cause as much damage as possible to President Trump. May not be true at all, but this is the perception, and in politics, perception really matters. Okay, on the other side, Republicans for Ukraine are running these billboards around Washington right now. We're Republicans, we support Ukraine, don't let Putin win. So it's going around Washington, D.C. so that legislators have to see them everywhere they go, and people around D.C., the bureaucrats, they're all seeing these. So there's a real contest for the narrative. I guess that's what I'm trying to drive at here. Like Trump's narrative versus the other side of that. The narrative that Marjorie Taylor Greene is proposing and the narrative of the Republican hawks who are trying to fight back against that. Okay, last 2 things. Here is an interesting image. And this goes back to what Zelensky was saying. While Ukraine is fighting, they're over here thinking, I wonder what happens next. What if Russia loses and like Ukraine's taking it in the chin? Europe's not really suffering a whole lot, but Ukraine is. And that's unfortunate. Finally, let's look at this. There is breaking news that Budanov is captured and again, I don't know that this is true, but I see it on Twitter, and so I'm telling you, take this kind of stuff with a grain of salt. Breaking, Budanov captured, according to reliable Russian sources. Well, reliable and Russian sources might not be, you know what I'm saying. According to reliable Russian sources, the head of the Ukrainian military intelligence, Kirill Budanov, has been captured. And then we saw it here as well. So let's listen.
Very likely that the head of Ukrainian intelligence, Budanov, lost his life as a result of another attack. Or at least this was the first report that at least that was some military officer says. They connect this with today's missile attack on a test site in the Chiguev area, Kharkiv region. According to them, the head of Ukrainian intelligence service was also there. So for now, we don't have like 100% sure information, but the sources start saying that very likely he was wounded or maybe more. Very likely.
So it is possible, but take it with a mountain of salt until you see authentic news talking about it. I mean, like major publications. If something like that has happened, you'll see it in the AP or Reuters or BBC or those kind of things. You'll see it in Kyiv Post. We'll talk about it. So don't stress until we actually see what's happened. All right, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes and the coffees. And thank you for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.